In Jesus' name, amen. So again, we are here and we welcome you. Dr. Braithwaite, you're a little scratchy, a little bad now, but I think you're ready and set to
Should
go.
be better.
Wonderful.
That's right.
Mhm.
Good to go.
So we're talking, Dr. Braithwaite, again about this whole matter of guarding our relationships. I think it is so important that every marriage couple understands the importance of guarding their relationship, making their relationship stronger and better. That's the essence of what we have been discussing over the weeks ahead. I mean, that the weeks past.
Yes, Doc, I don't know, just haven't been listening. But definitely, as we have been discussing over the weeks, guarding relationship is crucial. And we have spoken significantly about many of the areas where individuals must take the time emotionally to guard and to ensure that the relationships are protected from outside forces.
Yes, certainly. Now, today, I want to begin, Doc, by looking at this whole matter of if we're going to protect our relationship from outside influences, it is important that we know who we're married to, right? And we need to know the strengths, we need to know the weaknesses of our partners. The whole matter of building intimacy with our spouse, I think, is the greatest protection. And if we can spend a little time on that, building intimacy with our spouse, with our partners, so that the more I know my spouse, the more I'm aware of the strengths and weaknesses of my spouse, the better I'm able to relate to that individual and to accept that individual for who he or she may be, depending on whether you're male or female.
That's correct. The reality of intimacy is one of those things. The more intimate we get with somebody is the more we learn about that person. And in that context, we are able to see both their positives and their negatives. The truth is, in a relationship, you can't hide your weaknesses forever. You may be able to hide them for a little while, particularly during the dating phases. People tend to hide their shortcomings and their weaknesses, but as time goes by, they definitely will come out.
Yeah. When people spend a lot of time together, I gather that they tend to feel safer. They sometimes relax. Some people may say let their guards down. Because you get comfortable.
Right.
Can this sometimes set up people for outside influences?
Well, one of the things about emotional intimacy, I think we've shared it several times, Doc, and you've spoken quite a bit about this in the context of when we speak about adultery. A person may not be having a physical affair with somebody, but they can be having an emotional one with them, meaning that because you find what you consider to be a safe space to share all of your deepest concerns, your emotional issues, and you connect with somebody at that level. We call it, we speak about transference and countertransference. You can now begin to share things with somebody else that you ought not to be sharing with them. And in that way, you let your guard down and you can connect with somebody emotionally at a level that maybe you don't even understand, to the point where you really begin to develop feelings for this person outside of your marital, outside of your spouse. And that can be quite concerning.
All right. That is so true. So it means therefore that I must take careful, pay close attention to who I am speaking to and how far I go. Now,
Yes.
now, if we zero in on the relationship I have with my spouse, the more time I spend with my spouse, the more time I share and seek to grow, I am also sharing not just my strengths, but I'm also exposing my weaknesses. So
Absolutely.
the more my wife gets to know me, the more she's also going to know of some of the maybe not so pleasant things about me.
Right.
And and
Do I,
and that that that
do I have a witness? I was just going to ask if there's a witness out there, somebody.
it's about being genuine, eh?
Right.
Because the reality is we are not perfect. We are not sinless creatures. We do have some, I think everybody has some very good character traits about them, but all of us come flawed. And when we share, when we open with our spouses, we expose the good things and the not so good things. It is difficult, I want to suggest, to accept faults, to see character flaws, and to tell yourself, I have to live with this. That's a challenge. What I'm suggesting here, Dr. Braithwaite, is that this journey towards intimacy is going to expose us to some not so pleasant things.
Yeah, I think you used a very, important word back there, and that word was genuine. I think in our relationships, we need to be genuine. And rather than, maybe, as I said earlier, maybe in the initial phases of dating and so forth, you always want to show your best side. You don't want to begin the relationship showing you're ugly, right? But as time goes by, I think the relationship has to mature, and people have to become aware of the fact that none of us are perfect, and we do have some sides that are not the most exciting. The ability to be mature to determine how you can how showing my internet is a little unstable, but showing how you may be able to manage those challenges is important. And then one of the huge questions that you have to ask yourself as you go through the dating process, understanding that dating does not always lead to marriage, is is this something that I can live with?
Very important question indeed. Is the so I was thinking as you were talking there, Doc, that when a couple gets married, I'm talking about individuals who never lived together, right? So here you have a young man who is a Christian, let's say, committed. So he was not living with the young lady before they got married. So on the night of their honeymoon is the first time they are living together. This is the first time they're going to sleep together. This is the first time they're going to wake up in a bed together. And so on that first night of the honeymoon, they spent a lot of time in courtship and going places together, etc. But this is a new experience for them. And you would tend to think that there is some degree of tentativeness, but as they spend more time together, they begin to relax. They begin to become more comfortable. They begin to allow their partners to see more of who they are genuinely. And that old saying, to see me and come live with me, are not quite one and the same. And so as they relax more and they're comfortable doing things their own way and exposing their faults and their character traits, the inefficiencies to one another, the other person now begins to see, hey, this was not an angel that I married, and they may see things that they don't so like. And I think we are aware of these things, that, we may have imperfections. And, I pretended to be this nice guy while I was courting, but now I'm waking up every morning with this individual. And we can't pretend for too long. So they begin to see me as I am. I begin to see my spouse as she is. And sometimes we become afraid of those things.
Yeah, the reality is that once you've said I do, that's supposed to be it, right? Um, and the journey from that point forward should be one of a committed relationship where you are actually maturing, learning how to manage the differences. I think those differences can vary in terms of their intensity, but I think that, the person who is committed to a relationship should want to work through. And, the challenge today is that, Pastor, we have too many people who are not committed. They only get married for the good, and that's a challenge.
Yeah, indeed, and a serious challenge too. And I think it is important that what we're seeking to do here is to allow our listeners to understand that marriage does not how do I best say this? Does not in any way inoculate us against the challenges of life.
Yeah.
So that you are married, you may still find yourself having some fears.
Yeah.
Will my spouse be satisfied with my snoring, or with my inability to keep the home as tidy as I ought to? And these kinds of things. And so people can genuinely have some fears in their relationship, fear of our spouse's rejection of the flaws that they may see in us, as an example.
Yeah. So, considering our realities, we look at relationships that have been around for many, many years. And, the relationships that have survived for 30, 40, 50 years, if you speak to those people, they would tell you that it was not the easiest journey. But they also told you that the rewards of marriage were great. Marriage is an excellent institution. But they will indicate to you that they have been through their ups and their downs. And I think most couples will also let you know that one of the things that has helped them through the journey has been their ability to engage in difficult discussions, to engage in conflict, but have a system of resolution where they were able to work through the challenges in spite of how difficult they may have been, coming out on the other side, knowing that they still loved each other, rather than engaging in negative behaviors in conflict situations that sort of destroyed the relationship. And I think we have said it over and over again on this program that where persons learn to address conflict matters in productive ways, the relationship actually becomes more intimate, and the couple actually grows better together.
That's a very solid point. We must not give up. We must not throw in the towel. Success does not come overnight. Some people say it's a journey. The whole concept of intimacy itself is a journey, where we walk together, we overcome obstacles together, we overcome challenges together, and that's the idea. We like to talk about making your marriage a priority. You must make your marriage a priority. You must want it to happen if it's going to happen and if it's going to be successful. So Doc, for a while we were talking about this matter of intimacy. When I expose my true self to my partner, creating a sense of somewhat uneasiness because my partner may begin to see some flaws that I have. I want to just share a little something here. And I think you highlighted a bit of it. That negative traits are hard to live with. The controlling husband, the insecure wife, the person who is critical and who may find fault. So you marry this person, and I began by saying just now that you're now living together for the first time, and you are discovering that your spouse has some character flaws. Your spouse is critical. You do something and your spouse maybe correct you and tell you that's not how it is supposed to be done. In my home, that's not how we did it. That's how we want it. And you begin to ask yourself, is this it? Or your spouse may say, listen, I find you to be critical. And you may pull yourself away and begin to think, my mother used to tell me this, and now my husband is telling me this, or my father is now telling me this. My husband is now telling me this, or my wife is now telling me this, and it may cause you to wonder, should I continue to be myself, or should I just pretend? These are challenges. How do we overcome those?
Well, I think in the multitude of counsel, there is wisdom. If a person, if you've been hearing this thing over and over again, it might suggest that the challenge is really yours. And so it may be something that you want to work on. But in the context of our discussion, Doc, not to switch really, but I just wanted to highlight the context of our discussion as we look at boundaries. What we're here saying is that these highlights from your spouse as they share and recognize some of the shortcomings may push you into a space where you try to distance yourself from your spouse and could cause you to end up having a discussion with somebody else. And we're talking about here in this context how intimacy can sometimes promote or produce intruders or create intruders in your marriage. So what we're saying here is that while you may have these difficulties, you still have to live within the context of boundaries and not discuss these intimate details with other persons, which can create a challenge. But definitely, if you're hearing it over and over again, you may want to look at it.
So Doc, if I have a good friend at work, you're suggesting, I kind of like the point. So I'm asking you to repeat it because I think it is worth repeating. I have a very good friend of work, and I'm fearful of some things that are going on at home. You're saying I should recognize that the things that are transpiring between me and my spouse belong to a special place, and that I should not open the door to allow some third party to come in. I should not expose them to that, certainly not without my spouse's knowledge and agreement.
Absolutely, Doctor. You have hit the nail on the head. You are then exposing yourself really to having an intruder in your relationship if you continue to share that information with a third party, as you mentioned, particularly without the permission of the third party. And secondly, especially if that third party is not a professional person that you have agreed upon who can actually help, because you really do have some very, very, I want to use a good word here. You have some people who are quite intellectual, and that person understanding your shortcomings can begin to provide for you an environment that you're looking for. Which can cause you to lean in that direction and ultimately cause greater challenges for your relationship.
Most certainly. And notice that I said not just without your partner's knowledge, but without your partner's consent.
Consent, right.
Because some people may say, by the way, I told my best friend so and so. And
that's knowledge, right?
You did what? So that it's not just knowledge, but it is consent. I think it is very important for us to.
Can I make a quick point here, Doc? Because I don't want people to feel that we are trying to keep people in a position of secrecy when they're going through difficulties. That's not what we're saying here, because we know everybody needs somebody to talk to. But what we are saying is that in the context of a relationship, we have to be so careful, and you don't want to share this information with somebody who really is not in a position to assist you. You want to share this information with somebody who can actually help, and who's professional, and who, your friend may have all best intentions in the world, but because of their lack of knowledge in the arena and because of their own maybe biases and shortcomings, can create more of a difficulty for you than you bargained for. So what we're saying is, we're not saying to keep stuff to yourself and suffer, but we are saying to, if you need to speak about it, which we encourage you to do, find somebody professional to do so with.
Well, especially as we're talking about intimacy, Doc, marriage being a journey towards intimacy. And when we talk about intimacy, we're talking about the two becoming one. which means that there are some things that should only be shared with your spouse. And these, I want to use a term here. I hope folks understand this. I was going to say these are sacred things, but these belong to the confines of marriage. You ought to have friends. You ought to be able to talk to your friends.
Right.
You ought to be able to joke with your friends. But there's some things you don't, when you go to a friend's house, you don't have full access to every room in that house. Certain places are private. And so when people come to your marriage, there are some areas that are private between you and your spouse. And that should be respected. The husband and the wife.
I would. No, you're perfectly right. I was gonna say, Doc, because there are some friends where in the home, they invite persons to the home and they do have access to every space in the home. And that is a concern. That's a boundary concern. And I wanted to highlight that because there are, in your relationship, in your marriage, there has to be space that is private. And some people allow people into every space. And we're saying that is a violation of boundaries. And it means that you don't have strong boundaries and you need to establish them in your physical space and also in your emotional space.
And may I just say that if your spouse says to you, listen, I was disturbed by the fact that I think you went a little too far there with your friends. That should be an indicator. This is your spouse saying, hey, you're crossing boundaries there. Remember the concept of boundaries. Those of you who are listening to us, the concept of boundaries. Boundaries are markers. They're designed for specific purposes, to keep you in lane. And if your spouse says you are crossing the line here, we should respect that. We should understand and appreciate that is your spouse trying to keep you in the right path as opposed to going overboard. I think, Doc, our time has kind of dwindled away quite quickly. I don't know where the time went today, but it looks to me as though we have just a few seconds to wrap up here. So we are going to continue this intriguing discussion. I'm amazed that the time went by so quickly, but we're going to continue this very intriguing discussion next week. And we really want couples to listen together. We would really appreciate if you can get your spouse to listen with you. That would be a very good thing. So we have a repeat broadcast at 6:30, I think, Doc, this afternoon, Thursday afternoon, and of course on Saturdays at 2 p.m. We encourage you. These are good times when perhaps you can listen with your spouse. Yes. So friends, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and may God bless you until next time.